What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, a general appreciation of TV past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and serialized at MLHilty2452 to see what all I'm watching. This week, we are going to be talking about The Last of Us, and we're going to be talking about season 1, doing a quick recap of that, give our thoughts on that, as well as talk about The Last of Us, the video game, since my guest today has played the first one and you've played the second one. Is that correct? So, and then we're going to actually talk about some TV news that hit this past week. By the time that we drop this, it might be a week or two old, but we'll still at least get our thoughts out there. So I am here today with frequent collaborator, fellow Civ Pop contributor, and good friend, John Tillyard. John, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Pretty tired from work recently, but otherwise it's okay. Watching a lot of TV at the moment, a lot of good stuff out.
And I was just talking about this with someone recently. I am making the argument that so far, 4 months into the year, TV is having a much better year than movies. So far, the movies this year have been very up and down. And you ask a lot of people what their favorite movie is from this year, they're going to be like, I don't know, because there's been some stuff that's been good, a lot of stuff that's been okay, and then there's been a lot of stuff that's just there. So, but you ask a lot of people what their favorite TV show is, there's a lot of stuff that's jockeying for that top position.
Yeah, in terms of like really good movies so far this year, Black Bag and Companion, that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good TV.
A lot of, yeah. So, and thankfully, The Last of Us is back just to add on to this embarrassment of riches that television has just given us this year. Because, you know, in the next couple months, we've got we've got The Last of Us season 2, we've got Andor season 2 coming out. So it's just going to continue to just pour on for the good stuff with television. But before we talk about television, we got a bit of television news lately. So I see behind you, and granted, this is an audio-only podcast, that you have a Harry Potter poster behind you. Is that a Marauders map?
The Marauders map, yep.
So you have a Marauders map poster behind you, which means I'm assuming you're a Harry Potter fan. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, just a little bit. Here's the thing. I was 11 when the first book came out.
Okay, so
I am about as exactly the right age as it's possible to be.
That is the sweet spot for that, just because 11's the first year that you can go to Hogwarts, right? Or
yeah, that is Harry's age. Yeah, so for the first like 4 years of the books coming out, I was Harry's age.
Yeah, so
and then it got out of sync a little bit because there was a delay for the 5th book. But yeah, mad Harry Potter fan.
So with that being said, HBO is rebooting the Harry Potter series, and this time in TV show form. And we got some casting news for that. So before we get into some of the casting news and kind of general thoughts, John, real question, real talk here. Are you even looking forward to a Harry Potter television series?
It's not something I would have ever wanted. I prefer the books. I stick to the books, I say. But it is also an opportunity, I suppose, for them to do a more faithful adaptation of the books, maybe. There's a few things that they missed out from the movies I would be kind of interested to see. There's also a lot of stuff they missed out from the movies that I am not really interested in seeing in live action. It's works fine in the book, but I don't think it translates well to visual media. So if it's a faithful adaptation, I'm kind of interested in it, but I don't think it's anything I really wanted. I don't think. It's a tricky.
I think that is kind of where everybody else is at too, is that the desire to have this is not very high. And I think a large part of it is because a lot of people hold the movies in very high regards, even though from a faithfulness standpoint to the books, there's some stuff left to be desired. And that I think from a nostalgia standpoint, I think there's a lot of loyalty to the cast. And I think that's what makes some of this stuff so jarring, is that some of the decisions that HBO is making in regards to this. And it feels more like we're milking a profitable IP to the best of our abilities, just so that we can continue to just leverage it and be relevant. And that's frustrating to me, because also HBO did not do a very good job of doing the Fantastic Beast series.
I think that was a bit misguided in a lot of ways. Five movies to get to something that wasn't like a huge part of anything. And like, did you watch what did you think of the Fantastic Beasts movies?
Yeah, it was an odd choice for like an expanded universe kind of thing. I was kind of excited for them when they came out because like watching the Harry Potter movies, obviously I already knew what was going to happen. So seeing something new from the Harry Potter universe, that had me excited. It's like, oh, like all the expanded universe stuff that the Star Wars universe has. I'm going to get something that for something that I'm actually a big fan of. And it was nothing really. It was just not very interesting. And to be honest, even as a hardcore Harry Potter fan, I had a hard time following some of them. Like they just add a lot of their own mythology. A lot of the magical creatures that they introduce in those movies never mentioned anywhere in existing Harry Potter lore, like anywhere. Because like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is an actual book that was published. It's not very long. It was published as a charity event, and the magical creatures that are introduced in those movies are not in the actual Fantastic Beasts book.
So what are we doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah, because I thought some of the things that were interested. I thought I was a little interested in what America's interpretation of magic was going to be. I was kind of interested in that. I was kind of interested in a sprawling world adventure, but then you start to introduce a lot of people from the original series. Like Jude Law as Dumbledore, I thought was an inspired choice, but I'm not sure why he was even there. And the whole purpose behind it felt, was not to introduce magical creatures. It was to get us to this big duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. That's it. And like, did we
mentioned in the first book? So I guess they figured, oh, let's actually see it. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess. And that kind of falls into that thing with Star Wars. Like, do we really? There's some things within Star Wars. Like, are we sure we want to see this story? Like Rogue One, for example. I was like, okay, do I really want to see the story of how the rebellion got the plans for the Death Star? I was like, not really. But then I saw it and was like, yeah, okay, I was actually kind of interested in this. I wanted to see the duel because I thought the duel could have been interesting to see, even though I know the end result, unfortunately. But I didn't need 5 movies to build up to it to eventually get to that.
5 movies. And as much as I like Jude Law, I'm not sure he's Dumbledore, to be honest. I would never have pictured him as Dumbledore. Even a young Dumbledore, I don't think he fits. Yeah. Nothing against Jude Law. I just don't think he quite fits the role.
Yeah, and that's fair. And that actually is a good segue into our casting news. So currently right now, they have cast 6 individuals for various roles. It's mainly the contingent of individuals from Hogwarts. So
it's all the professors, yeah.
Yeah, so the main ones that we got, and this was speculated already for a while. Now it's official that John Lithgow is going to be Dumbledore. I have lots of thoughts on that. Janet McTeer is going to be Professor McGonagall. Oh, I'm going to butcher this. Papa Isidio, I messed that up a lot, is going to be Severus Snape. Nick Frost is going to be Rubius Hagrid. Luke Fallon, one of those, is going to be Professor Quirrell. And Paul Whitehouse will be Filch. Now, let's take away Quirrell and Filch. Thanks for announcing that. And let's just focus on the first 4 that I mentioned, unless you have a big pervasive thought on the casting of Professor Quirrell and Argus Filch.
I think Paul Whitehouse is a good fit for the role. He has played some sort of like grumpy and like bad-tempered characters in the past, but he's also quite known for like being a comedic actor. So I think he could add like a little bit of interesting like comedy to him. If you want like an idea of how he might play Filch, go onto YouTube and look up the old Gits sketch that he did with Harry Enfield. That might give you an idea of what kind of performance he might give. But I think he's a good choice. But no thoughts on Quirrell, really. I don't really know who that is.
Okay. So we've got Dumbledore, Snape, McGonagall, and Hagrid. So I'll let you pick any one of those to start off with first. What are your thoughts?
Lithgow is the one I heard about first, so I think we should start with him.
So a couple things with John Lithgow that I would like to point out. One, he's not fucking British. So granted, John Lithgow is an amazing actor, and I am excited about his interpretation, but John Lithgow is also old as fuck too. So if they want to have this Harry Potter series span a long time, they better pray to God that John Lithgow does not keel over and die at some point.
I mean, Dumbledore's supposed to be old anyway, so maybe that's the thing.
Sure. I would agree with that, but those are my two primary concerns right off the bat, is that John Lithgow's a little bit on the older side, and also he's American. And I cede the floor to you. What are your thoughts about the casting of John Lithgow as Dumbledore?
I mean, I've never seen him in anything where he does an English accent, so I'm not sure how he's going to pull that off. But other than that, I think he's a good actor. I think his performance in Conclave is probably going to be similar to what we might see from him in this show. The one big thing for me, as a fan of the books, that I think I'm going to hold him to, okay, let's see what you can do here, is I don't know if you remember in the Goblet of Fire when he grabs, in the movie Goblet of Fire, where he grabs Harry and he says, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" That's a big infamous thing among fans of the books, because he does not act like that in the book. He just asks him calmly, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry?" Yeah. So if he can pull that off, if he can do that scene right, he has definitely a plus in my book. Although that's 4 seasons away, so we've got a while to wait to see what he can do there. But yeah, he definitely has a good distinct delivery to the things that he says. It's interesting, actually. For a long time, I knew him from Third Rock from the Sun, where he's much more eccentric, a much more comedic kind of actor, and that's not Dumbledore at all. So yeah, it's interesting now that he's become a very different kind of more serious kind of actor. But I do think if he can pull off an English accent, I think he could be pretty decent in the role. But and I don't think in his particular case he has particularly big shoes to fill with Michael Gambon or Richard Harris. I didn't actually like either of those as Dumbledore. They were okay for what they did, but they weren't how I pictured Dumbledore. I think John Lithgow has the potential to be more like how I pictured him in the books.
So I think for me, the big thing with at least Richard Harris is that I felt like he looked the part. And
yes,
that's something that I will give him credit for, but Richard Harris felt a little too frail at the time to be Dumbledore. Here's one thing that I will encourage you at least to check out a little bit, because I've actually never seen it, but John Lithgow in The Crown was Winston Churchill. So that could potentially give us a potential look at what that could look like, maybe. But
I have not seen it. I did not know that.
So that was one thing that when you said I've never seen him do an English accent, and I thought he was in The Crown, but I've actually never seen the earlier seasons of The Crown, when it was allegedly good. So I am curious to see if he can. There's no doubt in my mind, because John Lithgow feels like a classically trained actor. So I feel like he'll be fine in that. But to do that consistently, I'm a little concerned about that. Okay. And it just feels counterintuitive to what they kind of did with the movies, which I know I need to stop wrapping my head around. The movies and the TV show are going to be different. So I need to stop thinking, oh, we're only casting British individuals in the TV show. But I just feel like that's also a pretty big step away from where we've been before. But
yeah, it does sort of lead you to question, was there just no British actor that was good enough? It's a weird one.
John Lithgow must have had a hell of an audition, or he must have, knew exactly who to talk to and who to...
That thing you always say when you get questionable casting. Maybe they just did an amazing audition. And if they did an amazing audition, then fair enough.
I'll talk very briefly about Hagrid and Nick Frost. I'm in. I think at minimum, I'm just going to be interested to see what Nick Frost is going to be able to do, because he's done comedy, so I'm not worried about that from a Hagrid standpoint. But he's also done work with kids, and he's also done work where he's done a little bit more dramatic stuff. So I think Nick Frost is going to be a perfectly fine choice for Hagrid, but I'll just wait to see what happens. But I don't really have a whole lot of qualms about this. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty on board with this. I mean, this is one I was very uneasy about because Robbie Coltrane just does it perfectly in the movies. So he does definitely have some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick Frost absolutely fits for me. I can absolutely picture him as Hagrid. I can see him adding a lot of good comedy to a lot of the good funny moments that he has in the books. I actually can't think of any off the top of my head, but yeah, he definitely like can fulfill like the emotional moments and the comedic moments that Hagrid has with the kids. And I think he has, like you say, he has good chemistry with kids in the past. It also makes me suspect if maybe Simon Pegg is going to show up in this, because he always seems to do something with Simon Pegg whenever he's in a lot of things. There's this theory that if Nick Frost or Simon Pegg are in something, the other one is going to show up eventually. So I've just seen maybe.
I think that's a fair point, and I'd be looking forward to that. And off the top of your head, what would you want to see Simon Pegg do?
Well, who is the right sort of age for Simon Pegg to play now?
Yeah.
He's got to be getting on a bit in years now. He could be Lupin, actually.
That's exactly what I was thinking as well. Lupin feels like a good choice for him, and I feel like Simon Pegg would be able to pull off the werewolf part and look all tired and disheveled as well. And Simon Pegg knows how to reel it in a little bit, so I'd be cool with that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Janet McTeer as McGonagall. That's another one. I'm like, okay, like I haven't seen anything that she's in, but I'm okay. You look the part, kind of. So we'll wait and see. Have you seen anything that Janet McTeer has been in?
Yeah, checking her filmography. I have seen things that apparently she was in, but I don't remember her being in it. I actually think she looks slightly too young. But maybe that's just because Maggie Smith just looked so old when she was in the role. I don't think they ever specify. I think no. I tell a lie. They mention in Order of the Phoenix, I think, that she's been working at Hogwarts for about 40 years. I think so. She is kind of old. So maybe she's a little young, but maybe they'll do something to her face to make her look older. I'm not sure.
Perhaps they've got to make John Lithgow look a lot older as well. So we'll see about that. All right. No controversy at all about the Snape casting as well, so I'll cede the floor to you about, some of your thoughts about the casting of Snape. So, but before I do that, one thing that I do want to point out is that you mentioned how Robbie Coltrane leaves like a big mark. I think unfortunately Alan Rickman also left a pretty big mark on that role as Snape as well. I think that's, that was a big thing. Like when he died, I think that's something that like a lot of people our age, there's a lot of things that you could remember Alan Rickman for, but Snape is pretty high up there.
Sheriff of Nottingham and Hans Gruber.
Yeah. So
two other pretty iconic roles he was in.
Yeah. So I'll cede the floor to you first to give some of your thoughts on the casting of Snape.
So one of my first thoughts when this show was announced was like, well, whoever they cast as Snape has got some big shoes to fill because Alan Rickman was just perfect. He's iconic in that role. I don't know who this guy is, and I'm sure he's a fine actor, but he is actually described as white in the books. I just double checked that to make sure his skin color, if I mentioned it, it is. He's mentioned as being pale when he's first introduced. So yeah this is an interesting decision. It is an interesting decision.
Because the guy who was cast as Snape is black, and it was a curious choice. So I'm withholding judgment for now, but if they're going for interpretation in the book, this is fairly not what the book says. And this isn't to say that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just curious as to where this is potentially going to go. Because
and if you're going to do that with any of the roles, like do the colorblind casting thing, they're doing it for a character that we're not really supposed to like, or we don't like for a long time in the series. That's interesting.
It seems a bit like a bit of a backwards decision. Plus, also the nose as well. Like
yes.
I like Snape's nose is very distinct, and this guy's very handsome as well. So it's like, what are we doing with this? So I don't know. Like I'm all for colorblind casting, but this feels a little curious, and I'm just wondering, was his audition amazing? Like I don't know. I've never seen anything that this guy is in, so I don't know.
Another thing that actually occurs to me is that there's a bit in, I'm trying to remember which book it is now. It's in the film as well. Half-Blood Prince, I think it is. Harry goes into the pensive and he sees his father bullying Snape.
Yeah.
Now, if he's doing that to a black guy in the show, immediately you're going to say, well, his father was racist.
Yeah.
It's the obvious interpretation of that scene.
Yeah. So lots of questions about that one, and I'm potentially going to want to see something that he's in. I've heard he's in the show Gangs of London, which I've tried watching a zillion times and I've loved it, but I've just never finished it. So I don't know. So I'm a little curious to see what was it about this guy that, you know, they decided to cast him for, dare I say, one of the most pivotal roles in the entire series that is not one of the kids. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the trust the process mode, but that's the one that, along with John Lithgow, that I'm like, really? These guys? Like, but I know for me as a fan, I've just gotta wait and see what their plan is with this, and we'll go from there. But Warner Brothers doesn't exactly build trust with me, especially lately right now. So we'll just have to wait and see, right?
Yeah. My long-term thought with this series actually is if it's a success, it's going to lead to other things. Like the reason I have a Marauders poster on my wall, but the specific reason why I went for the Marauders is I want to see them. I want to see a show about them. I want to see like James and Sirius and Lupin and Wormtail hanging out together, like as friends, like at Hogwarts. Just like a sort of 70s Hogwarts or something like that. That would be so cool.
I think that would have been a much better idea of something to do, especially considering this is what HBO has been doing a lot lately. They did this with House of the Dragon, or they're doing this a lot with Game of Thrones. Well, not so much HBO, but they're doing this with Dexter. They're doing all of these different spin-offs in the past. And I don't understand why they have to retell the same, or they're doing this with Lord of the Rings as well. I don't understand why they have to just retread on the books when there could potentially be more story to tell, and something that we haven't seen before that could be potentially really interesting, because we got zero time. And granted, we get little snippets here and there, little times getting to know James and Lily, because by the time the first book starts, they're gone already. So I think that would have been really cool if we would have gotten more stuff like that.
Yeah, and spoilers for the books. There's nothing in the books either about those two, really.
So it's whatever. It is what it is, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I figured you'd be a good person to talk to briefly about that and go from there. So do you have any other thoughts about the Harry Potter TV series or the casting before we get to The Last of Us?
I sort of want there to be a scene where Hagrid has a butterbeer in the leaky cauldron and is waiting for this to all blow over.
I think that would be great, and just a nice tip of the cap to, you know, Shaun of the Dead and just all of that. I think that would be great, and I think that I would love it if the Simon Penn would have a fun cameo there as well, just like give a cheers, and then you don't see him for another couple seasons. Yeah, I think that would be great. A lot of my excitement for this is also going to hinge on who they cast for those main three, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. I'm very curious to see who they're going to cast for that. And we'll go from there, because if we run into a similar situation that we do with Stranger Things, where that's another poster that you have behind you, where
it is, yeah, right.
You cast them super young and then you wait so many years in between some seasons because all these kids blow up and they become really busy, or at least some of them did. And then you're not going to get the, you know, necessarily age appropriateness of the way that they look. I'm going to be a little nervous about that, unless they have plans to just film all 7 seasons at once.
That's
which
pretty much the only way it's going to work.
Which feels crazy. It feels crazy to do that, but I don't know. We'll see. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about The Last of Us. So, The Last of Us came out in 2023. Let's see. So, for those not in the know about The Last of Us, it is about a global pandemic destroys civilization because of fungus, right? Fungus?
Yeah, a fungi infection or virus.
So
It is a real thing that exists apparently in ants.
great. So comforting to know that that is potentially a possibility. So that's a bummer. But the premise of this is after a global pandemic destroys civilization, a hardened survivor takes charge of a 14-year-old girl who may be humanity's last hope. So we have in this our main two cast is Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller and Bella Ramsey as Ellie Williams. So that's our main two cast, and then we've got a lot of ancillary people as well who kind of just show up here and there for an episode. Before we get into the TV series, you played the video game before, so I'd like to get your thoughts first on the video game and what you thought. Or what kind of gave you the or what was it about the game that made you want to play it? Huh? Did I lose you? Hello? All right. So let's talk about The Last of Us, and let's talk first about your experience with the video game. So you played the game. So what was it about the game that you enjoyed, and why did you pick it up in the first place?
So I was quite late to getting to the game. I'd heard a lot of people talk about it. It's like this amazing experience, like from both like a gameplay and a story perspective. And I actually sort of held up for it for a long time because it just looked like a generic third-person shooter to me. But people like kept telling me, "Oh, it's so good, it's amazing, it's like the best game ever." The other thing they kept talking about was the super realistic graphics, and I'm like, yeah, I actually don't really like super realistic graphics. It's always like takes me out of the experience. Like, you've got these super realistic graphics, and then you get shot in the head and you're fine. If you just take a health kit or something. But eventually I was like, okay, well, I've got some free time. I've got a game. I need to find something new to play, so I'll give this a go. And it became quite obvious from an early point that really what is the real USP with this game, and why everybody says it's so great, is the story. It is like a movie. The cutscenes are all shot like a movie. The dialogue feels like something out of a movie. I think they pace it like a movie as well. And the other interesting thing about it that I had not seen in a game before is the way that they incorporate a lot of the story into the gameplay. Like, you have characters like talk as you're walking around, like in Control, you've got little optional bits of dialogue sometimes. And also like the AI, like you control Joel for most of the game, but you've got Ellie following you around the whole time, and she actually will help you out fighting enemies quite a lot. So that is something else I had not seen in the game before, like this sort of co-op thing where you've got like an AI helping you out. From the gameplay perspective, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just like your kind of like typical third-person shooter sneaking around. You've got your stealth sections, you're crafting, weapons and everything. So a lot of people do say it's like an outstanding game from a gameplay perspective. I think it's just like a decent game, but the story is really where it's at. And a lot of the time, there's lots of games out there with great stories. I'm not sure I ever really remember the stories from the game in the same way that I remembered it from The Last of Us. And also like the ending, which is the same ending as season 1 of the show. It left a lot of like ambiguity to it, a lot of like intense debate about, what was really going on with that ending. Why did certain characters do the things that they did, and what do other characters think of it? I don't think I've ever really had that kind of thoughts at the end of a game in the same way. And it's such a somber end to a game. Not normally when you complete a game, you're like, yes, there we go.
When it's very triumphant. Yeah,
it's great. But when The Last of Us ends, you're like, so what happens now? Well, what was that? Yeah, that's so weird. And the interesting thing is that like the game ends the same way season 1 of the show ends. So you know how the game ends. Have you seen the show? There was no intention to make a second game when they made this game. So that was basically how they were planning on ending things. So it was really like kind of an interesting way. I don't think I'd ever seen that before from a game, like to just end it like that and that, just like have no other story to it. So it left a lot of fans like debating whether or not there should be a sequel. And if there isn't a sequel, what really was the deal with that ending? But yeah, I think once I'd finished it, I fully understood why everybody loved the game. It was like, there's just no other experience like that from a gameplay and story perspective, the way they intermingle them.
Yeah.
Just the thoughts in your head about the whole game story when you finished. It's like, I've not had that kind of experience with a game before or since, really, I don't think.
And by the time The Last of Us came out, I was already out on console video games. But The Last of Us feels like a video game that I would love, because I was a huge fan of the Resident Evil games. And by no means am I saying that they're the same thing, because they're not, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, it's also the game style. I can't do first person shooters to save my life. I'm the guy who is getting caught in the corner trying to figure out how to shoot somebody and gets shot in the head or gets a knife thrown at them because they're like, oh, you're cannon fodder. So I suck at first person shooters. I'm pretty good at third person, shooter or slash 'em up games. And to me, this checks a lot of boxes of things that I was interested in, because one thing that I liked about it was the premise. It felt like it was really fleshed out really well. And there's a lot of things that are intriguing about that. And then also that these creatures, there's varying levels to these creatures. What are they called again in the game and in the...
There's different types of them, but the main ones that you're probably thinking of are the clickers, where they make that sort of clicking noise as they're approaching you. That's one of the sort of iconic things about the game, is that sort of noise that they make as they're approaching.
So I really like that. I think the dynamic between a grizzled older guy who it's clear he's lost a lot during this whole apocalypse scenario, and this young girl also presents like an intriguing thing. I'm a sucker for dad figure stories. So any opportunity that I get with something like that, I'm going to take full advantage of that. It's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the fourth Resident Evil game, because the main character kind of becomes a father figure to this kidnapped girl who he feels a sense of duty and responsibility to her. And I really enjoyed that. So there was a lot there that I was intrigued by. And also, truth be told, I recently have been getting into the itch to possibly watch a video game or to play video games again. And The Last of Us is pretty high up there because I'm a PlayStation person through and through. And I feel like that's one that just falls right into this is the type of game that would be probably perfect for someone like me.
It's interesting, actually. I just noticed the other day, the PlayStation Store is now offering both games like as a package for I think it was like £95.
Nice.
That's going to be a lot of gameplay. That's got to be at least 20 hours, I think, to play through both games.
Good grief. All right. So as a fan of the game, what was your excitement level or anticipation level for the first season? Because did you play before the show came out or after?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually played it, I think, at least twice before the show came out.
Okay. So what was your anticipation level for the series? Were you excited? Were you a bit nervous? Because before, I would say before The Last of Us, like The Last of Us kind of is one of the shows that shows the model of how, hey, for some of these games, a TV show feels pretty spot on to do as opposed to doing a movie instead. So I guess I'm curious for you, what was your anticipation level for the first season?
I thought that there was a lot of the game that was going to translate perfectly to show, because the cutscenes, for example, it's just like a sort of copy and paste thing. Just do the cutscene. And then I think about the gameplay, and there's a lot of sort of periods which are very long, and you obviously have to cut out of a TV show, but there's also not much story to them. You're like sneaking past like bloaters or something. It's like, well, that's not going to be the interesting thing in the show. But obviously they're going to need to cut stuff out anyway, so that actually fixes itself. But there's also like other bits which are kind of gameplay, but they're also kind of story as well, and I wasn't quite sure how they were going to do that. And I also felt like there's one particular part of the game where I'm thinking, is a TV audience going to buy this? Which is like they're fighting off like hundreds and hundreds of these clickers, like one after the other, which obviously in a game you kind of need that kind of thing, to add to the challenge. It's like, well, that's not going to make much sense in a TV show. I'm sure TV audiences are going to buy that. But obviously what they did is they just didn't have those scenes to quite such an intensity. It's like they only fight like one or two.
Yeah.
Which may also create a problem. And a lot of people have pointed this out, that the world doesn't look particularly dangerous. There's not enough zombies in there to make them think that, well, is this really like a zombie inhabited world, or is it just like a few of them roaming around? So that was definitely a concern of mine going into the show. But I also was sort of thinking about what are they going to change about Joel and Ellie's relationship, because I think what really makes their relationship work in the game is how long they spend together, and you can see that sort of gradual bond. are you going to be able to do that in a show with like less time? But I thought if anybody could pull it off, it'd be Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, because they work so well together. So I definitely was more on board once I'd heard the casting. But the limited time was going to fix a lot of problems, I thought, but it was also going to create problems story-wise, I thought.
So for me, a couple things about this was I was excited, but the stigma for me was there about video games being interpreted in film or TV even as well, because video games do not have a good track record on film. They just don't. And that's because there's just not enough time to do all the things that they need to do in order to tell a compelling story, set up the world without having a ton of like previous knowledge and things like that. So I was concerned about that. However, once they said it was going to become a TV show, I was like, okay, I can kind of get on board with that. But the stigma is still there, because by this time we didn't have Fallout. We had like one season of the Halo TV show, which I was not a huge fan of, but
We have that League of Legends one.
Arcane. Yeah, there was Arcane as well. So it was a bit mixed in terms of how I was feeling about it. Plus also, I thought Bella Ramsey's casting felt pretty spot on. I was a little Pedro Pascal out at that point, because this was around the time that Pedro Pascal was getting to be like peak levels of, okay, this guy is just everywhere right now, because he was in The Mandalorian. He was in this. It had been announced that he was going to be Reed Richards as well. So I was a little nervous about that, but also I didn't play the game. So I was like, I hope that this is not a retread of The Walking Dead, or God forbid, that awful Resident Evil show on Netflix. So I was very curious to see what this was going to be all about and what would make this different. And there was a little bit of anxiety there as well, that have we reached peak saturation of zombies as well as like a main villain? So there was a lot of thoughts in my head. That first trailer, I was very intrigued by, because I was like, okay, this looks great. So we'll see. And also, this to me also represents never judge a showrunner based on some of the previous work that was not well received, because one of the showrunners on this, he was known for like more comedic stuff. So there was that too. So I was nervous about that. But with that being said, what did you think of season 1? If we're using our Sif Pop scale of like it, loved it, hated it, didn't like it, or it was just okay, what did you think of season 1? And also, spoiler talks. It's been out for 2 years. The video game has been out for longer than that. So we're doing full scale spoiler talk on this. But what did you think of season 1, John?
I loved it.
Yep.
Yeah, both as an adaptation in terms of what they adapted from the game and also what they changed. I think I loved pretty much everything about it. I think I can think of one specific episode I wasn't quite so keen on, but otherwise pretty much loved everything about it.
Yep, I am right there with you. I loved it. It was one of my favorite series of 2023. The pilot is amazing. It's a great way to set the stage for what this world is going to become, particularly that gut-wrenching opening sequence, which, can you walk me through that? Like, is that how the game starts too, or is
the interview in the 60s?
Oh no, I'm talking about what happens with Joel.
Joel's daughter. Yes, that is indeed how the game begins. That is like the pre-title sequence that just sort of, I think it works as like a great introduction to Joel's character, but it also works as quite a good tutorial. And the interesting thing actually in the game is that for the first like couple of minutes, you actually play as Sarah. So that's not something obviously you can replicate in the show, but it definitely gave you a much bigger emotional connection when Sarah dies. I think you had actually played as that character at the start.
Yeah. So I'll kick to you. What was something about season 1 that you enjoyed that you want to give the show props for?
So I thought they did a good job of like expanding the world, because a lot of these like scenes of the apocalypse that take place in other parts of the world, they are not in the game. So that was a good little bit of world building. You can't really do that in a game, like just completely leave the character you're playing as. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But obviously, in a show, you could do that kind of thing. You can just like show that this is happening in other parts of the world, and basically just sort of send the message that they're fucks. There's really nothing they can do except just try and survive.
Yeah.
At this point. Which is interesting because a lot of the criticism of the lack of zombies is that people are saying, the world does not look dangerous. We're being told that it's dangerous, but you're not really seeing that many zombies around. And I certainly get that from like the perspective of people who played the game, because there are tons of them all over the place in the game. I keep calling them zombies. They're not called zombies in the game, actually. They're called infected.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing that they changed in the show, which definitely makes a lot more sense, and it actually doesn't make much sense in the game, so I'd see why they got rid of this. In the game, the infection is also in the air, certain parts. It's like they have this thing called spores, where basically your character just has to put on a mask and not breathe it in. And I guess if you breathe it in, you are infected the same way as if you were bitten. And the writers of the show just quite quickly pointed out that, well, in reality, I think if that was the case, there were just these areas where it's just in the air, everybody would be infected pretty quickly. I think it would all be over. So they just got rid of that completely. It's an odd thing in the game, really, because it's not even really like a gameplay mechanic. Your character just automatically puts his mask on as soon as you enter like the infected air, and then when you exit it, he just takes it off again. There's no mask in your inventory to put it on or anything. So
what's the point? Yeah, what's the point? That
the only purpose it really sort of serves is the first time that Joel puts his mask on when he's with Ellie in the game. Obviously, Ellie doesn't have to put her mask on because she's immune, and he just looks at her and thinks, God, you're just breathing this in? It just like hits him. Yeah, she really is immune. So yeah, other than that, it doesn't really serve a huge purpose. And there was something else I was going to say about it, and it's gone. Oh, I think it also like gives you more of a kind of eerie sort of feel to it, because obviously you can see it in the air. It's like sort of dirty air everywhere, and it just makes the atmosphere of the game look a bit more sort of dreary and like depressing maybe. But from a story perspective, it's kind of weird. It doesn't add any gameplay, and it really does just create the problem that if it was in the air, it'd just be over like instantly. So I'm glad they got rid of that for the show. The other big change they make is with the character of Bill. In the game, you obviously you don't have any scenes with him where it's just him and Frank. And actually, when Joel and Ellie reach the town, Bill is still alive, and he basically just helps them out through the town. Frank is dead. You never meet Frank in the game.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is actually there's a little optional bit of gameplay where you can pick up a letter from Frank and read it, and basically Frank is telling Bill that he's an asshole and he's always hated him, and you can choose to give it to Bill if you wish and just see what he thinks of it. So it's interesting that they've taken just that little bit of optional gameplay from the game and basically turned it into like a full episode where you actually get to meet Frank. So I do like what they're doing here. I have to think that they're going to do something like that for season 2 as well. Just like take a small detail from the game that maybe players may or not even remember and turn it into like a full narrative. So I do like that they're doing that, and I like that they're also, adapting quite faithfully the big scenes from the game that everybody remembers. The big one I think that everybody has like seen and remembers is when Joel first finds Ellie after she's run away, and Ellie's like, why don't you just admit that you've wanted to get rid of me the whole time? I know about Sarah and all that. That is almost, except for one line, word for word, what it is like in the game. And it's also shot for shot. The one line that they change, I think they actually changed for the better, because when Ellie brings up Sarah, in the game, Joel says to her, Ellie, you are stepping on some mighty thin ice here. In the show, he just says, don't, which I think is way more effective. So yeah. I do like that these changes they're making they're definitely for the better.
Yeah. So as somebody who didn't play the game, some of the things that I really enjoyed about this, I thought the first encounter with the infected, I suppose, with Joel and Ellie, it gave me video game vibes, because it felt a lot like gameplay, because you're just sneaking around trying to see what you have from a weapon standpoint and trying to see how do you get through the situation without being seen. So I really liked that aspect about it. And then I do like how you get the sense that nobody is safe in this world. That's something that I feel like with a lot of characters, they have that plot armor, unfortunately. And right off the bat, you do understand full well that Joel as a character, you know that he's gone through a lot, but seeing what he's experienced, and it is not so much because of the zombies, but it's because of, or infected, I'm sorry, because of people. And that is always the big push and pull when it comes to a lot of these survival shows, is that who's the bigger threat in this? Is it the people, or is it the thing that everybody is running from? And I think that this series, to me at least, balances that pretty well. They do enough to show that the infected, they're extremely dangerous. There's that one episode that it feels super chaotic, and how, there's tons of people, or tons of the only like really big action sequence in the series that does have to do with the infected. I think that's midway through the season, where they all come up from under the ground. I thought that part was really cool. And I'm glad that it wasn't just that all through and through, because you're right, that doesn't really translate to film all that great, because it makes it exciting if you're playing it, but it's also not very exciting if you're just watching it. But I think they did a good job of just sticking with some of the more pivotal storylines. I'm curious, because did they do a whole lot of backstory with Ellie? Because that one episode where Ellie is with that girl, and
yeah, that is a DLC in the game.
Okay,
it's called Left Behind.
I see what they did there. So I really enjoyed that episode. I really liked it, and it gives a lot of context to what or who Ellie is, and kind of just what she's been through as well, which to me, I'm all for that, because you can't just, I feel like you can't just have Joel be the main character. They both have to be the main characters. And if they're both going to be main characters, you have to have a little bit of backstory about Ellie that gives us a little bit of a sense of the things that she's been through and what's to come for her, since she is immune to all of this. So I did enjoy that a lot. I thought the chemistry between Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey was just off the charts, really good. And I think that was a good proof of concept for me to be like, yep, I'm in. Those two, you knew it from like the first couple episodes that these two would be great together, and I'm so happy about that. And I thought the cinematography in this was outstanding as well. It was really great.
It looked like the game as well.
Even better. That Bill and Frank episode got me really good. So I did like that. I did hear that it wasn't really in the game all that much. So
basically, none of it. The game. The character Bill is in the game, and Frank is mentioned, but nothing that you actually see is in the game at all.
So that's interesting then, about the choices that they made and to tell this story like that. So I still loved it, though. I thought it was really great. And also the ending. I love the ending of this, because like you said with the game, and if what you said is true, that because you say it, that the game ends the same way as the TV show.
Exactly the same.
You're left with a lot of questions about morality. You have a lot of questions about the choices that people make, and the length that you will go to for someone that you love / care about. So I really like that, because you're right. All the video games I played, the end is like a triumphant thing where, hey, we've defeated the main enemy, when in reality, it's like, oh, this presents a moral conundrum here that is going to blow up at some point. And that to me was fascinating, and something that I really liked.
Yeah, definitely liked the way they pulled off the final scene, because that is a really effective. I actually think maybe Ashley Johnson in the game delivers the final couple of lines a little bit better, actually, than Bella Ramsey. But outside of that, they recreated it perfectly. It's such a powerful moment where you can't quite tell if Joel really believes what he's saying when he says "I swear," and you can't quite tell if Ellie believes him when she says "okay." But it's all there, just leaving you wonder, why did Joel do that? Does Ellie believe him? If she doesn't believe him, why is she staying with him?
Yeah,
it's really really fascinating. And it really leaves you wondering, like, is that a happy ending or not? Or is that just an ending?
It's at this point also, I think you do have to interpret it as it's just an ending, because there are no happy endings in this world right now, because, you can get back to civilization all you want, because The Walking Dead has this conundrum all the time, is that you can try to act as normal as you want, that the world out there doesn't exist the way that it does. At some point, the bill's going to come due, and you're going to have to face this at some point. So I think
that's pretty much what the second game is about.
Oh, okay. Well, good, comforting to know. That's
some of it anyway.
But yeah, so I'm excited about that. So was there anything about, because this is something that I'm curious about from your standpoint, is that, was there anything about any of the changes that they made from game to TV show that you weren't a huge fan of?
So I forget the woman's name, the other woman that runs like the little sort of like group that sort of tries to have them killed. I forget her name, but I'm pretty sure she's not in the game, or if she is, I don't remember her playing a particularly big role. But that was an odd addition, I thought, because like she makes a lot of odd decisions, and it was weird. I thought also the character Sean in the game is not deaf, which I suppose made for an interesting kind of dynamic between him and Ellie when they're talking. I just kind of wondered, like, was it a change that was needed? I'm not quite sure if I like that change or not, but I don't remember Sean being a particularly pivotal character in terms of like his personality. Certainly his ability to talk wasn't an important thing, so I guess it's a change you can make, and it doesn't really change the story. So it just like adds a little bit of extra like visual storytelling to it. Trying to think of other changes they made now. I mean, more colorblind.
It doesn't have to be changes, just anything that you're like, yeah, this didn't translate well to TV. And, it is what it is with that. Not everything's going to be perfect.
Like Sarah and Tommy's wife, that small colorblind casting, that they done that they weren't black in the game. But that's just like, that's not pivotal to the story that cover. So I guess I can get behind that. One change I did like a small like addition, is you don't actually see Jackson in the game. You see it in the second game, and the Jackson you see in the show looks just like the Jackson that you see in the second game. So I like that they're actually utilizing the fact that the second game was already out by that point. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of like the episode where the zombies come out, and you said you liked it from like a zombie apocalypse, fighting zombies the whole time. That actually was the one episode I wasn't so keen on, because I thought there was a lot of dumb decisions made there. Particularly when she's about to kill them, and then she gets distracted by the fact that a hole opens or something. I thought that was kind of weird. But yeah, other than that, I can't think of any like changes they made that I was not a fan of. Another interesting addition, actually, is that the scene where Ellie's mum is giving birth to her, you actually see her, and she's played by the voice actress of Ellie from the game, Ashley Johnson.
I did hear about that. I thought that was nice.
That was quite clever, Ellie giving birth to Ellie. But we actually get an explanation for basically why Ellie is immune and why it is such like a 1 in a million sort of thing, which is not in the game. So I'd like that. They were just giving like a little bit of extra like information, which is kind of important. And it would have been kind of interesting to know that in the game as well, I thought. So they're taking what they have from the game and they're improving on it. I think that's really good.
Oh, any other thoughts about season 1 before we talk about the start of season 2 and the game? Because that's going to be a little bit less of a spoiler talk, since even though the game has been out for a while now too, but I don't want to be spoiled too much on that. But any other thoughts about season 1 before we move on to kind of some of our thoughts about season 2 and your thoughts about The Last of Us Part 2?
Like if I had like a major overall negative about the show, I think I could have just done with a little bit more. I think there's certain sections of the game that I think they could have stretched out a little bit more in the show, maybe. And like the final episode is actually the shortest episode of the whole season, and it covers like such a pivotal part of the game, with like where Ellie is emotionally, with and particularly the giraffe scene, which is like one of the most famous scenes from the game. Putting that in the same episode where it all ends as well, is a lot to squeeze into a final episode. So I think I would have liked to have seen that be 2 episodes. Actually, that's probably the only like major note, just a little bit more perhaps, which is to cover the game.
I feel like that's a good problem to have as well, with that a show that you want more of it, because with with the movie, like that's a shorter amount of time to try and pack in a lot. And, I feel like we wouldn't have gotten a good sense of what Joel and Ellie are like together in a movie, because you have to subtract pretty much that entire fourth episode out about Bill and Frank. You have to subtract a lot of these like lesser storylines that don't specifically have to do with getting Ellie to her final destination, right? So, because how from start to finish in the game, like, how long did it take you to play that?
It's at least, I would say, 15 hours.
Yeah.
There's a site actually that tells you. Give me a sec, just look it up.
Okay.
There is actually a site that tells you on average how long it takes to beat a game. And of course, my phone decides now to play up a little bit. 14 and a half hours just to play through the main story of the first game. So yeah, it's not the longest game in the world, but it's fairly long.
It's still crazy to me because the first Resident Evil game, you get a reward if you could beat the game in under 3 hours. So, like, to me, like, to play a video game for that long, to me right now feels crazy, because between work, being a parent, and being pretty much like a full-time podcaster right now, it's like, how the hell am I going to fit that in? But I suppose if you enjoy the
game's even longer.
Yeah. If you and also for someone like me, who sometimes I get stuck in a game and I'm like, I don't know where to go from here. So because we all have those moments in a game where it's like, I have no idea what to do right now. So yeah, you got to do some backtracking. You got to, whatever. So that's crazy. 14 hours for a game. And you're like, that doesn't feel that long. So anyways, so for season one, I just think it's a monumental achievement in terms of writing, character development. Like right now, HBO is in a bit of a delicate spot because they don't have Succession, they don't have Game of Thrones, they don't have Barry. So most of their prestige TV shows are done. The Righteous Gemstones is winding down after this season, and House of the Dragon is kind of a bit in flux right now.
I mean, try and adapt a bit more of the books, guys. Maybe that's the way to go.
Oof. Who would have thought, right? So right now, one could make the argument that this might be HBO's most important show right now, because The Penguin was amazing. And by all accounts, it doesn't look like they're going to do that again. So I'm just very curious to see what HBO is going to like. They've been propping this show up a lot recently as like, hey, this is going to be like our big show that is going to showcase a lot of, our talent and a bit of the grittiness that you would expect from HBO. So that's where, for me, my anticipation level and my expectations for season 2 are sky high, especially since we've been waiting. Granted, we have not been waiting as long as some other shows. Like, we've been waiting 3 years for Severance to come out, and it did not disappoint. But for this, it's been 2 years since this came out. So my anticipation levels for this was pretty high for this. And also to know that from a gameplay standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a 5-year time jump?
Yes.
So can you give me kind of a high level, what is because you mentioned that they didn't think that they were going to do a sequel for this, which again blows my mind in a good way that they would have the ending that they did. So what is the second game even about then? Just more of the same, or is there something else?
So it is basically about, I cannot think of the word now. The key word everybody talks about with this game is the key theme, and the word has gone out of my head. Empathy, that was it. There's a key theme of empathy with this game, which might actually be kind of difficult for them to pull off in the show, because I'm kind of trying to dance around spoilers, but there's a huge moment halfway through the game where you are basically led on to just loathe this particular character. And then suddenly you are playing as them. And you gradually, over the course of the next few hours, you suddenly become much more empathetic towards this character, and you see things much more from their perspective, and you better understand why they have done what they've done. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull that off in the show in quite the same way, because obviously you do not have the element of playing as the character in this. Right. You cannot see things through their eyes in quite the same kind of way. So I'm going to be interested how they pull that off. Are we spoiling the first episode, or are we?
Yeah, let's talk about the first episode.
Okay, so it looks from just the first episode like they're going to tell the story in much more of a chronological order than they do in the game, because Memento looks pretty easy to follow by comparison to the order they tell things in the second game. Really, chronologically speaking, things are all over the place with the game. So yeah, I think they're going to try, and because that was not well received, I think, by fans. Fans did not like they showed things out of order. So I think they're going to try and fix that problem in the show and tell things in more of a chronological order. There's actually a scene in the first episode of this new season that is right at the end of the second game. Chronologically, it fits in perfectly with where they put it in the show, but it's where you actually see it in the game is right at the end. So that definitely suggests to me that they are going to tell things in more of a chronological order, which I think when I sort of piece it back together in my head of how the story is going to play out, if it's in chronological order, I think that's going to work better as a show, because it's going to be more of a kind of back and forth between Ellie and this other character. Whereas in the game, it's all Ellie and then all this other character, like one after the other. So yeah, that is basically why I'm quite kind of more excited about this second season. The interesting thing about when they announced the second game is a lot of fans weren't very happy. Actually, they felt like they didn't need to make a sequel to that game. That the ending to that game only works if you don't have any more story, like the ambiguity to, what you're supposed to feel at the end of that. That's lost if you make any more of the story and you make a second game. So I'd be interested to see, like, if people receive the second season of this in the same kind of way, when we kind of knew we were getting a second season when you saw that ending to the first season. But the thought that's gone out of my head, it's gone. Sorry.
It's okay. If you remember it, just give it a shout and we'll go back to it. So the first episode of this season, I enjoyed it. It's good to just be back and just kind of set the table again of where we're at. Maybe I'm just happy to have this back, but like, okay, we're talking about a bunch of different things right now, and I just need to see the story unfold a little bit. So I don't know. I don't have much to say about this because it's a first episode back, and maybe I need to go back and rewatch some of the things from season 1, but I thought the first episode was good. I enjoyed it generally.
Yeah.
The context you shared about there's a scene in this that's like at the end of the game. It was like, huh, okay. I'm not really sure, like, which scene is it specifically?
Yeah, I think actually this game, the story to the second game might be too long for one season. So I think this might be 2 seasons. So that might be the pivotal scene where a big thing sort of happens. And there's a big that might be how they end season 2.
Okay.
Be that
interesting.
I'm not sure if, but certainly in terms of like how much story we got in the first episode, when I think about the length of the story in the game, I don't know how many episodes this season is. Have they confirmed that at all?
I don't know, but I can. Let me check. Well, this season of The Last of Us is supposed to have 7 episodes.
Oh, wow. So yeah, they are definitely not going to get through the story of the second game.
Yeah.
Just based on where they are at the end of the first episode, yeah, this is definitely going to be 2 seasons then. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I think I know what the final scene of this season is going to be in that case.
Interesting. Okay.
Which makes you wonder, are they going to tell this in chronological order in that case? There are definitely going to be flashbacks, because there is stuff during the 5-year time gap that they fill in the gaps there with flashbacks earlier on. I assume there's going to be additional stuff that's not in the game as well. The Catherine O'Hare character is not in the game. So that's obviously going to be more stuff with her, and the little sort of backstory stuff with her husband that is not in the game either. But it looks like she's going to maybe fill a little bit of the role that was filled by Tommy in the game, from a emotional like connection with Joel sort of standpoint. So maybe Tommy's just going to be like this dumb brother kind of guy doing a lot of stupid stuff in the show. They're going to downplay it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else related to the game that I have to say. No, I can't really think of anything else I could say that wouldn't be a spoiler.
Okay.
I think they're going with this.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts about The Last of Us or season 2, or like anything in particular that you're looking forward to? Because you and I decided that we'll probably wait until the end of this season to do a recap of this a little bit more. But any other thoughts that you want to share about anything that you're anticipating, or just anything for that matter?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this season ends, and assuming this is 2 seasons, I'm interested to see how they adapt the ending to the second game as well, which obviously will be a while yet. Because I have a lot of thoughts about the ending to that second game, which obviously I cannot get into right now because that's a big spoiler. But yeah, that's and there's actually a scene in the first episode that kind of plays into the ending to the second game. But you don't actually see really what happens in that scene. I think, again, I'm kind of dancing around it. I can't really say anything. I think they cut away so that you don't see like the key exchange. And I think we might see that later on.
Okay.
It becomes more important because there's a key like detail between Joel, I think, that has not yet been disclosed. That I think we'll probably find out. We'll probably find out before the end of this season, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, that information makes the ending a lot more interesting, I think. Again, like the end of the first game, it really gets you thinking.
Got it. Okay. That's comforting to know. John, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think that's probably it.
Cool. So, well, John, as always, glad to have you on. Glad to talk to you about this. You and I have got a bunch of other things that we're planning on talking about, and I'm planning on having you on some of my other podcasts coming up soon. So appreciate getting a chance to talk to you and just continuing to collaborate. So where can the people find you, and do you have anything that you want to plug as of late?
Yeah, well, I am on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads with the username John and the numbers 86. And I write for Seth Pop. At the time I'm recording, my latest review has been emailed. It's not yet been published, but it's going to be The King of Kings. And then I'm reviewing another video game adaptation, Until Dawn, later on this month. And then next month, it will be the Karate Kid movie.
Oh, you got the Karate Kid. That would make a whole lot of sense about that. So check out John's writing, and then check out some of the other stuff that him and I talked about. We did a very deep dive into Cobra Kai that we went through kind of our thoughts on just Cobra Kai beforehand. We talked about all 3 parts of Cobra Kai, just, where that kind of left us. Him and I have talked about his love of football, and then also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. So check out all the other stuff that him and I have talked about, because it's been great getting to talk to you about just a little bit of everything. So looking forward to having you back on to talk about the end of season 2 when that does happen later on in May, and looking forward to chatting with you more soon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Cheers.
Hey everyone, it's Mike, and I figured it would probably be a good idea to do a quick addendum to our Last of Us episode, simply because so John and I had watched episode 1 of The Last of Us season 2, but this past week we had season 2 episode 2, which is called Through the Valley, and boy, talk about a trajectory changing thing for a show. Like this is going to be a quick spoiler talk, because I'm just kind of reeling from some of the implications of what this means moving forward. So quick recap of what happened in that episode. So we have Abby and her crew finally catching up to Joel, and Abby kills him. So Joel is dead. Joel is gone from the series, and it's not like he's going to be, it's not like this is a fake out. Like he's straight up dead, and does it in front of Ellie as well. And this happens in the video game, so it's not like it's a huge spoiler. I think it was a bit shocking that it happened this quickly in the season. It's the second episode of the second season, and I think in the interest of just getting the the main storyline in, I think they just killed Joel and just wanted to try to avoid any spoilers or anticipation, kind of similar to what happened in like Game of Thrones when people were like, oh, the Red Wedding's coming, and so I think like, first of all, it was a brilliantly done episode and just brilliant move on the showrunner's parts to actually have the guts to kill Joel and Pedro Pascal's character off right off the bat. So because this is all any of us are really talking about right now. So implications of this moving forward, so that our big bad right now is Abby. Like, I think we're all looking at Abby and her crew. So, and by the way, also shout out to Caitlin Deaver, who did just a fantastic job during that part. So I think Abby's going to be our bad guy moving forward, and it's going to take a lot for us audience members who are looking for any shroud of empathy for Abby. It's going to have to take a lot, because even the people in her crew just saw how ruthless that she was when she killed Joel. Was just awful, and to do it in front of Ellie like that as well, that's rough. So there's that. And then the other part of this is that what this means for Ellie moving forward. It's pretty clear that throughout the course of this episode, Ellie's going to have some post-traumatic stress to try and get over exactly what happened. So there's that. I guess the other part to this as well, that I have to give a shout out to Tommy and just everybody at Jackson Hole for holding strong and trying to keep all of the infected at bay. Those action sequences were really awesome, and I do give them a lot of credit for that. I thought a lot of that stuff was really cool. So, episode 2, game-changing episode, one of the best episodes of television, one of the best episodes of television this year. And yeah, I'm very curious to see the implications of this moving forward. I would have anticipated that this scene would have been at the end of the season, but it was kind of interesting that they did it now. But hey, we'll see what happens.